Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our last session of the day. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. We hope you've had some great learning, and I'm sure you've all been scribbling down notes and links all day. Our last session, again, I'm Eudora Struble. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We are pleased to have for our last presentation, Chelsea Porter, who's going to talk about accessibility tools and strategies to test for accessible digital content. Lots of people have been dropping hints about testing all day long, so she's got a lot to cover, I think. Before I introduce Chelsea and hand it over to her, I'm going to just do a couple of housekeeping items. First, this presentation is being recorded. We will have both live human captioning, CART, and American Sign Language interpretation for our session. And please use the Q&A feature to post your questions. Chelsea at some point may decide to take some chat questions. We may enable that, but we'll let you know if we decide to do that. And if you have issues with Zoom, please let us know by email at accessibility@ncstate.edu. And please remember after the session to complete your survey. You can use the same survey link to complete a survey for each of the sessions you attend today, and we would love to have your feedback. Chelsea is the new head of digital accessibility at UNC Chapel Hill. She took on this role in February after being a digital accessibility consultant at UNC for 3 years. Chelsea has a background in teaching through the North Carolina Community College system, where she taught digital effects and animation for 11 years. I also recently learned that she is a gaming nerd, which is fabulous. She changed careers to web design, where she learned more about digital accessibility, and this drove a passion for inclusion, eventually landing her at UNC's Digital Accessibility Office. Chelsea, we're so pleased to have you here with us today. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Eudora. Yes, and I'm even showing off one of the web pages we're looking at today is a gaming web page, just to dig into my geek background a little bit more. All right, so let's get my screen share going on here and move all the Zoom windows out of the way. All right, so Zoom windows out of the way. There we go. Accessibility tools and strategies to test for accessible digital content. We're going to be talking about a couple of different topics today, primarily website accessibility testing and application specific accessibility testing. I only have like 10 slides because most of my presentation is going to be more show and tell, where I'm going to be actually demoing tools that I'm using and techniques that I'm using to test for certain content. So when we're talking about website accessibility testing, we're going to talk about some of the common issues to look for, what to do if you find those issues, how accessibility is a process, not a project, and try not to let it overwhelm you because it can feel like a whole lot when you first run some of those accessibility checkers. And then we'll get into the demo of tools for website accessibility testing. And then for the application testing, we're going to look briefly at Microsoft Word and Adobe Acrobat. Just Aaron already mentioned it earlier today, but just sort of highlighting those accessibility tools again, where to find them and how they can help you out with making your documents more accessible. All right, so website accessibility testing. So I apologize, but you're never going to surf the web the same way again. Digital accessibility is fantastic, but it does make me a twitch sometimes when I go to certain websites and I see things flashing around or moving or color contrast problems. It definitely opens my eyes to what the problems there are out there. But hopefully you're gonna be able to take away from today's training some tips to test your own content to alleviate some of those potential problems. Now, this is a list of just some common website issues to look for. Many websites will have issues with at least one of the following: heading structure, missing alternative text, color contrast of text, including on mouse hover or keyboard focus, cognitive overload, non-descriptive or non-unique links, and a lack of full keyboard navigability. If you all have been in the majority of the trainings today, you'll probably have heard of several of these bullet points. I know Erin and her document accessibility training talked about pretty much all of these in some way: the heading structure, missing alt text, color contrast. That's part of the beauty of digital accessibility, is that once you learn the key concepts, you can apply them across the board. So headings, alt text, color contrast in documents, you search for it and you test for it in pretty much the same way on the web as well. Now, this is obviously not a comprehensive list. We do not have multiple hours to discuss this, so we're just going to hit some top level items that are pretty common for you to run into. Now, before we get into the demo, let's talk about what happens if you do find some of the issues that I'm about to talk about. So first off, double check your results. Sometimes it might be user error on your part, or there might just be a workaround that you missed, or more commonly, the tool that you're using might have just flaked out. A lot of the tools that I'm going to show today are free tools, which, you do get what you pay for, and sometimes they will just flake out and you have to reload it and try again, and you might get different results. So always double check. Then if you do find something, can you fix it? Is it within your purview? Is it within your power to fix it? If so, dive in. Adding alt text to images, fixing font colors for color contrast can oftentimes be quick fixes depending on your level of knowledge and comfort with HTML, CSS, etc. Now, what if you can't fix it? Well, this is where we phone a friend. Complex issues may require a more advanced set of skills involving HTML, CSS, ARIA code, etc. But just knowing that there are problems is important. Knowing is half the battle. If you know, you know. So, just knowing that there are those problems out there, you can start working on a process to fix it. Next step would be let the stakeholders and site owners know. If the fixes can't be done quickly, then inform everyone involved about the site, everyone involved in the site about the issues. That way, heaven forbid, if you do get a complaint or a comment that comes in about the inaccessibility of your site, it won't be a shock to people that you've already found this information and you are working to resolve it. Now, accessibility is a process, not a project. This is part of my department's motto whenever we are talking to people across campus about digital accessibility. If you have a web page with probably hundreds of different pages or other internal sites, thinking about trying to fix all of that for accessibility can be daunting, right? It's not a project that you're going to just set a deadline and be able to complete easily. It's like, I'm not going to be able to say I'm going to make all of my websites accessible by August. You need to set more realistic goals and deadlines and break it down into chunks. Maybe it's just going to go through and make sure all of my alt text is correct. Okay, check. I'm going to go through and make sure I'm using descriptive links everywhere. Okay, check. Break it down into those manageable chunks. And remember that accessibility needs to be a way of thinking and an ongoing commitment, because even if you do go through and you make your site 100% accessible today, tomorrow somebody could add new content to your site that is now inaccessible. So as you're moving forward, it needs to be that ongoing commitment and keeping in mind to design with accessibility in mind for all of your new pages, new projects, etc. Creating and designing something that is accessible is so much quicker, easier, faster, cheaper, all of that, than having to go back and remediate or fix something that was originally created inaccessible. And of course, keep in mind that our end goal here is increased usability for all of the site users, or your document readers, etc. Accessibility benefits everybody because it increases the usability of the content, the understandability of the content, and more. So it's just going to be a better experience for all of your users. Okay, so let's actually look at some websites and see how we would go about testing for accessibility. On this slide here, I've got some tools that I'm going to be using in this demonstration. So I'll show you what they look like. And we are going to be looking at two websites, Steam and the Perkins Library. Now, as you become more comfortable with testing for digital accessibility, you may find your own process that works for you. This is just sort of my process, how I start when I'm first looking at a website. to try to evaluate it for accessibility, as well as the many tools that I use. I am also going to be keeping this demo to a kind of a surface level. We are not going to dig much into the code today, that back end HTML, CSS too much. I don't know everybody's comfort level with that. That might get a little into the weeds for some people. So we just want to look at some tools and some top level resources that we can use to test quickly for accessibility. And then we can start seeing how deep the rabbit hole is going to go. Okay, so the first site we're going to look at, and I'm going to put this link in chat to make this easy for anybody who might want to be following along here. So this first site is the Perkins School for the Blind. So the audience for this site are going to be more than likely either blind individuals, low vision people, or friends, family, etc., looking for resources and things. So this is actually one of the most accessible websites that I have ever seen. And it kind of has to be, right? Because their primary audience is normally blind or low vision individuals utilizing screen readers, etc. But the thing I really like about this, as we sort of scroll down, is that this site was designed with an audience of people in mind who probably can't see it, right? They're going to probably be relying on a screen reader or some other assistive technology. But for the sighted users, I think it's a beautiful site, right? There is a lot of graphics, colors, text, interactive information on the screen. So I can even click on these little things and stuff pops out. All of this really nice stuff. So something I like to harp on a lot, and this is sort of getting away from the testing part for just a minute, but just so I can mention that a lot of people think that in order to design for accessibility, it has to be ugly. And that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. You can design an absolutely beautiful, interactive, functional website that is also as accessible as it can possibly be. And I think that this website is a great example. So now back into the testing part. Normally when I first get a website, I just kind of sit back and I look at it, and I'm trying to find any immediate red flags that stand out to me. Fonts, for instance, are all of the fonts, is all of the text easy to read? Okay, you're just kind of scrolling down, things look fine. Do I see any color issues that stand out to me immediately? I'm not seeing any. That doesn't mean there aren't any, but I'm just not seeing any. There's not a lot of like moving content. There's not a lot of things that would be distracting. There's a lot of information. That's fine. I do note that there's a video here, and there's also a video up here. So I might want to make sure that they have captions. But I just sort of sit back and take an inventory of what I have and see if I see anything glaring sticking out at me, which I don't see anything on this site, which I didn't expect to. So now the next thing I will do is keyboard testing. And in the previous session, they were just talking about keyboard testing, and Mike showed like a quick demo of some keyboard testing. I'm going to do some more of that. Keyboard testing is one of the easiest things to test for, while also the thing that can find the most issues, as kind of odd as that sounds. So the interactivity of a website with keyboard only, meaning I am not going to touch my mouse at all, is integral to the accessibility of a website, because so many different individuals are going to be relying on keyboard only functionality. So let's say if somebody is blind or low vision, they're not going to be using a mouse because they probably can't see where the cursor is easily on the screen. They're probably going to be using a screen reader or some other assistive technology like that, which again relies on keyboard only navigation. Somebody who has a mobility impairment with their hands, who cannot use a mouse for some reason, might be just using a keyboard to tab around and find the other interactive elements. And there's lots of other assistive technology that relies on that type of keyboard functionality, where I should be able to do everything I want to do on this website without ever touching my mouse. So let's try it. Just to make sure, I'm going to reload this page. So I have not touched on anything. So it's going to take a second to reload here. Okay, it's fresh page. I'm going to press the tab key on my keyboard. It's the TAB. It's over there just to the left of the Q key on your keyboard. And what tab should do is jump from one interactive element on the website to the next interactive element. So anything that you could click on and interact with, I should be able to tab to. Now, the first time when I hit tab, I get a skip to content button up there at the top. This is fantastic for keyboard only users and screen reader users, etc. Because imagine if I was navigating via keyboard and I just keep hitting tab, we can see where I'm at up there. All right, so I'm going through and I'm trying to get down here. Okay, I'm going to go to a page. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to go. Okay, so now I want to interact with this page. I have to tab through all of this menu stuff again, just to get to my main page content. But thankfully, because they have that skip link up there, the very first tab key I hit skips to content. So that skips all of that repetitive navigation. And now, if you notice, I am immediately down here on this register today button for play video. That's where I'm bouncing back and forth. So I've skipped all of that repetitive navigation information at the top. All right, so the first thing we have is the skip to content. That's great. The next test is just to keep hitting tab and ask yourself a couple of questions. First off, do I know where I am at on the screen? And right now, yes, if I'm up there in that blue bar at the top, there's a green box and there's a color swap between the background. So that's easy to see. When I get out of that bar, I'm keeping that green outline box. And that stays as I go through pretty much everything. And then even here on this top navigation, there's not a green outline box, but there's a green underline that's very visible. And if I shift tab, I can go backwards. Now these are drop-down menus, so I should be able to hit enter and open the drop-down menu, which I can. So now I can hit tab and go through all of this extensive drop-down menu here. Let me get back out of this. All right. And I can keep going. One thing I see on a whole lot of websites that have drop-down menus like this is that when I tab to it with keyboard, the drop-down will automatically open. Well, that's frustrating. And that's a different user experience, right? Because as a sighted user, I don't have to go through every single one of these links to get to who we are, right? So it's a different user experience, and this is a long menu for them to have to tab through. So that's one thing to test, is make sure that there is a keyboard open and close, and I can bypass that if I want to. That's very helpful for quickly navigating through the site. If I get to my donate button, again, it's still obvious that I'm there because it changes color a little bit and the underline comes up. That underline is a great addition because if you see the color change is very slight. It goes from sort of a brightish pink red to a darker pink red. It's very slight, but the addition of that underline has a great visual indicator. So I still know where I am and I can keep going down the page. So at this point I'm at register today. So if I pop off of it, it looks just like regular text, but if I'm on it, it's got the little green box around it. And I can just keep tabbing down through all of the elements on the page. Even these little bubbles, they kind of like bump out a little bit. So I can see where I'm at. And something I'd like to test, let me get down here to play video. So I'm curious, can I start the video, stop the video, close everything dealing with the video just with keyboard? So I'm going to hit enter to play the video. Okay, so that's opening up like a little modal window. And if I hit tab, I'm just going through all like the keyboard controls inside of YouTube. But eventually I'll tab over and it might be a little hard to notice, but in the top right corner, the X button shows up. So I can hit enter there on the X button and close that pop-up window that came up, all with just using my keyboard. And a reminder here, because I'm doing this a lot, it's tab to go forward, shift tab to go backwards, and enter if I want to interact with something. Like if I want to click on something, whatever you would think you would click on with a mouse, you hit enter to try to interact with it. Okay, so I'm not seeing any major keyboard issues. There still might be some other accessibility problems. Let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper here. Now I'm going to start leaning on some of the accessibility checkers that I have. One of the most popular and common accessibility checkers for websites is called Wave, W-A-V-E, and I will put a link to this in chat. This is a Chrome extension, and I believe there is also a Firefox version of this extension. And what this will do is when I click on it, it will run an evaluation on this web page and give me a list of all of the errors that it finds. Now, I want to take a moment and put a huge asterisk on this, sort of a caveat here. Automatic accessibility checkers are great for finding some of the low-hanging fruit, quick to fix type issues. But even on their best day, an automatic checker can only find maybe 30% of all possible accessibility issues. Now, that's going to be 30% more accessible than your site was before, potentially. But just know that even if you get something like this, which let me tell you, this is rare to run Wave and have 0 errors and 0 contrast errors. That's like almost unheard of for websites. There's almost always something that's broken somewhere, but 0 and 0, that's amazing. But that's not saying that this site is 100% accessible. Again, automatic accessibility checkers can only check a certain amount of things, but it's better than nothing. So there's not a whole lot to dig in here. I mean, I can go into details. It's got a few alerts. If you wanted to dig into those, you could, but they're not as prevalent as the actual errors, of which there are none. We're going to see a site in a minute that has quite a bit of errors. So just kind of keep this 0 in your mind. Another thing that is really helpful to check in Wave over here is the order. The order tab here, so to speak, in Wave shows all of the links on the website and the tab order that they show up in. So if you just start pressing tab, so it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you see how it's kind of going along up there. That's that same path that I was taking before. So that's one way of checking where your tab stops are in your navigation. But another thing that this order panel is great for is finding non-descriptive links. And I can't remember who it was that mentioned it earlier. I think it was Erin in the document accessibility training, where she was talking about those non-descriptive links where either it's like the entire URL is put on a website, or what I see most common are the learn more or click here links that make 0 sense out of context. So I can come down here and see, I can make an educated guess about pretty much all of these links. I'm not seeing any learn mores, read more, click here, anything that doesn't make sense out of context, because screen reader users can actually pull up a list very similar to the one that we're seeing here of all of the links on a web page, so that they could just jump straight to the link that they want to go to. Very similar to the way a sighted user would just skim a page to find the link that they want. That's what this list menu helps somebody do. So that's why we want to make sure that those link texts make sense out of context. Everything here looks pretty good. Hold that thought when we look at the next website, because that could end up being just a little different there. So that is the Wave accessibility checker. A couple of other tools that I really like to use.
Chelsea, can I pause you for just 1 second? You have a
Sure.
question about, they've just downloaded the Chrome extension. They're wondering how they actually run the checker. Can you just click through that one more time to demo that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so if you have downloaded the accessibility checker, it might have already populated it up here in your little extensions. I'm up in the top right of Chrome. I have a ton of extensions, I'm sorry. If it does not already populating up here, you're looking for this W with a gray background. If it's not up here, you can click on this little jigsaw piece and find it over here and hit the little pin button, and that will pin it to your little extension shortcuts up here. And then all you should have to do is navigate to the page that you want to check and then click this button right there, and it should pop up. If you want it to go off, then you can just click the button again and it will go away. It does take a minute because the site has to reload. But hopefully that answered that question. If that did not, let me know and I will show that again. All right, so a couple of the other checkers that I want to show off here. Accessibility insights for the web is one of my absolute favorites. So it does several things for me. Now, when I first load this, it's going to look like this, where it's got this like launch pad thing. I just jumped straight down here to ad hoc tools because there are several tools in here that are super helpful. Still keeping keyboard navigation in mind, tab stops is really useful because what if I have a lot of keyboard tabs and I don't know where they're going? This actually shows me, if I hit tab, notice it shows me this visual indication of where I'm moving around on the screen. It starts to get cluttered looking really quickly, but it's really helping me figure out where I'm at, where things are going. Are things in a logical order as I'm tabbing through? So it just kind of makes that tab testing even easier. So that's sort of a partner to keyboard testing that I like. All right, so let me turn that off because that's really annoying. Okay. The other part of this, several parts of this that I like, but headings is another thing that this does really well. And again, I have to go back to what Aaron was saying in the document accessibility training. Headings and the structure of your content is very, very important. And just like in documents, you want to make sure that you have a proper heading structure on your websites. What I like to say is that headings are kind of like chapters in a book. So you only ever have one title of your book, which is your H1. So there's your title, but then you have lots of chapters, main content sections. Those would be your heading 2s. Then you might have subsections of a chapter. Those could be heading 3s, heading 4s, etc. So what we can do with this check, first off, we want to make sure that there's only one heading 1 on the page, which quick scan down, I believe that's fine. Then we want our major content sections to be H2s and then subsections to be H3s. This could be one of those things that I would make a suggestion that, like, unlocking opportunity and igniting change is not really a heading in my mind, and kind of is neither is every child can learn everywhere. But you know, that's a page design. If it was me, the H1 would be something like Perkins School for the Blind, and then like a subsection of that would be this other text. I'll argue with the designers about that later on. But let's look at the rest of the hierarchy. We're going in the right order. We want to make sure we're not skipping heading levels. So you don't want to go from like an H2 to an H4 all of a sudden. Think of like the scaffolding when somebody's building a house and you just suddenly took out a row of the scaffolding. It's all going to start falling apart, right? So headings are sort of that scaffolding or backbone of the structure of your site. We want to make sure that they stay in a logical order. It jumps back to H2 when we get back to major content sections. And then those H2s are broken down into H3s, etc. So headings also looking great here. Again, I can make an argument for that, but that's fine. And I think that's kind of it for the accessibility insights. There's some other stuff that I would check if I had some contrast errors. I would check it. The next site is going to have some, so I'll show you some different tools over there. So it actually takes me quite a bit just to try to find things on this website that's broken. The last thing I want to show that's part of the keyboard testing is zooming in. So control and just like rolling the mouse wheel in to 200%. Does the site still fully function and still look good at 200% scaling? this also kind of switches over to a mobile view. So now I need to use my keyboard and make sure that I can open this mobile menu and I can still function all of this with my keyboard. This is important. I've had a lot of developers that are like, no, nobody zooms in that far. Or, that's just the mobile view. Why are you looking at the mobile view on the desktop? Well, what if I was low vision? What if I just came back from the eye doctor and my eyes are dilated and it's really hard to read this tiny font? So I'm like, what is this? What does this say right here? Okay, I can read that a lot better now than it was way out here. So yes, people do zoom in and everything still needs to function when they are zoomed. Okay, so let's leave a actually I see a couple of things in the Q&A. Let me get to those before I jump away. To Sandra's thing about our college system uses Siteimprove, which is run daily, opinion on that. UNC also uses Siteimprove. I'm a big advocate of not just Siteimprove, but any of those accessibility checkers are going to be putting you in a better place than you could have been before. I'm not going to be like, you have to use Siteimprove. It's the only one out there. There's several other good ones that people can vouch for. Siteimprove is just the only one that I've used to really vouch for. Siteimprove, just so everybody knows, is a bigger system that will scan the entire website and give you a report, as opposed to something like Wave that just scans one page at a time. But same caveat to Siteimprove is that it can only check maybe 30% of all of the potential accessibility issues. There are still, like the keyboard navigation stuff that I was doing, it can't test for that. So there's still a lot of manual checks, but Siteimprove is a great jumping off point. And then a question, why wouldn't we skip a heading level? How does that change the viewer experience? Like, what if we don't want to use H3 at all? Would it be appropriate to use H1, H2, H4? So no, that's not appropriate. The part of the reason is the way screen reader users will hear that content, they hear it announced to them as heading 1, blah, 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 heading 2, blah, blah, blah. So if they hear heading 2, some content, and then heading 4 and some content, they may think that they have missed some information. So now are they going to move backwards to try to figure out what it was they missed? It could be confusing. And it's also, at the end of the day, it's not proper web design. Not to like really step on any web designer's toes out there. You can customize the look of your headings to look however you want them to look. By default, they are bigger and bolder than the other text. H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest, but you can design them to look however you want. So there should never be a reason to have to skip a heading if you're just going for looks or something like that. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. I could talk about headings forever. I don't have enough time to dig into it today, but I hope that helps answer the question. Can accessibility insights for the web be used on a Mac? I think so. I am obviously on a Windows machine, but it is just a Chrome extension. So I think it's more of a Chrome question, but I don't see why it wouldn't be, but I can't promise that one way or the other. All right, so now let's go from a fantastic website to, all right, so I am a gamer and Steam has a very large part of my heart. But as an accessibility person, when I come to this page, the hair on the back of my neck stands up just a little bit. So if I just sit back and I do a quick, just look over the site, what am I seeing? A lot of stuff going on. First of all, I've got an image carousel at the top that's rotating. I've got tons of images all over the screen. I've got several rows of navigation with more drop downs underneath, a ton of navigation on the left, lots of what we call cognitive overload. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to look at. Like, even as a proficient computer user, I feel like I am very tech savvy. I use Steam all the time. It still takes me a minute to go, what am I looking for? A lot of times I would just skip all of this and just be like, I'm just going to type in the name of the game that I want, you know, whatever it is right here, and skip all this mess because it's a lot. So cognitive overload, that's one of the first things that I see. Can we slim this down a little bit? but that can be more of a subjective type opinion, right? So let's look at the objective accessibility issues. First off, I'm already seeing that this navigation over here, it's hard for me to read color contrast wise. I could only imagine if my screen was smaller or if I had any sort of vision impairment, this text is very hard to read. Now, if I highlight over it, that color is much easier to read. Like, why didn't they just go with that to begin with? I don't know. Let's scroll down a little bit. Okay, we're probably running into some color contrast issues there. I don't know. We'll see. Now we've got a GIF that's playing in the middle of the screen. I believe, again, I think it was Aaron that was showing GIFs. Like, does that need to be moving? Because I don't know about y'all, but I'll be scrolling down this page and looking at this. Immediately, I'm looking at this because that thing is moving. Even if I'm scrolling, my eye just keeps wanting to jump over there. Makes it much more cumbersome to navigate down. Oh, and the page just keeps going. And then like this text here, when I hover over it, very readable. When it's not hovered over, I can't read that text down there at all. Color contrast, very, very questionable there. Okay. So needless to say, we've got some issues. Let's try our trusty keyboard testing. Okay, I'm going to refresh the page so nothing has been touched. I'm going to hit tab, 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 tab. Okay, finally. I don't know how many tabs that was, but I just finally got to the main logo of the website. So there is a plethora of hidden things up there for me to accidentally click on. And if you look in the very bottom left where the links are, you can see these are actual links that goes to a legal page. I don't even know what all of these are. Just lots of stuff hidden up there. Okay, problematic. There's also no skip navigation. So not only are there all these hidden things, I am forced to go through it every time if I am a keyboard user. All right, well, I finally get here. Okay, well, after I leave support, I have no idea where I go after I leave support. Still don't know where I am. Tabbing again, tab. Okay, finally I'm at install Steam. I don't know what kind of void I went to in between support and install Steam. And I keep tabbing. Okay, I can't get to language for some reason. Notice that it goes from install Steam, login, no language. All right. Now it starts going down the left navigation for 8 years. I'm just going to keep tabbing down here until I finally get to the main contents of my page, which is more navigation up here in this bar here. And if I click on it, it goes into this, even though, yeah, those don't have any. I thought they did have drop down, maybe point shop down. But anyway, you can start to see definitely some issues there. So let me open up my accessibility checker for the web thing again. And let's do those tab stops just to sort of prove a point. All right, so let me refresh the page from scratch here and then turn it on. Tab stops. All right, tab. Look at it up there in the top left. Tab. What is this? Where am I going? Okay? Now I'm up there. Tab. And then it jumps over. Okay, now it's starting to make a little bit of sense. But what is all of this over here in this left menu to just get lost in? So that's where this tool can really help you visualize getting lost in there. So now let's run Wave. Oh, it's 127 errors and 62 contrast errors. That's problematic. We're not going to have time to solve all of Steam's problems today, but you can start to see some of the contrast errors. I will at least show some of those are highlighted. So basically all of these over here, like I said, that navigation is problematic. So let's check color contrast issues. This is fairly easy. So we know that over here is problematic. I want to show you another tool that I use quite a lot, and it's called Fonts Infos with lots of plural for some reason. And I can go up here, and as long as I have show hex value color turned on, I can do font color. And it tells me in a hex code what the color of all my fonts are. Okay, perfect. So that's one tool that I really like. So I can get that color, which I have already copied that color. So I'll come back to that. And then another tool that I like to use is this Colorzilla. This is yet another Chrome extension that lets me use an eyedropper tool to come over here and find. So I'm just going to pick the background color here, and that immediately copies it to the clipboard. So then I could use a tool like WebAIM's color contrast checker. I think somebody was asking Erin part of this in her document training. There are lots of color contrast checkers out there. WebAIM is just the one that I use the most frequently, but there's plenty of them. Just Google it. But it's always going to ask you for the font color or foreground color, the background color, and then it will tell you if it passes or fails. So I have already put in this navigation color from Steam, and it fails. Quick note, you will notice that it says WCAG AA and WCAG AAA. If you were here in Judy's presentation at the very beginning, she was mentioning that we must pass WCAG AA 2.0 or 2.1 criteria. AAA is nice. If you can pass AAA, that's great, but you don't have to pass AAA. You must pass the AA. Also notice that this text passes if it's large, which large text shows down here, basically 19 pixels and bold or larger, or 24 pixels and larger. So if I go back here and I use the same tool again, I'm going to turn off font color and let's remove layers, do font size. Yeah, that's only 12 pixels. That's not 19 pixels bold and larger. So no, still not passing color contrast. So that's just a couple of the tools that I use really frequently for testing on websites. I do see a question in this question. How much time do y'all have? The question is, the rotating pictures at the top banner, is that something that we should not use on websites? This thing right here is a nightmare for like a billion different reasons. Again, I don't have time to get into it today because I do want to show a couple of things for document remediation. The short answer is image carousels are inherently have a lot of accessibility problems that are hard to get around as far as keyboard navigability, screen reader functionality. If it auto rotates like this, it's very distracting. There must be a way to stop, play, pause, etc. I could have an entire hour-long conversation on why you should not use a rotating banner, or we call them image carousels like that. So hopefully that is a quick answer to a much longer question. Okay, because I am running low on time, because I am a talker, my apologies. I do want to real quickly step away from websites and talk just for a moment about application accessibility testing. Most applications that you use on a day-to-day basis, most of them will have some form of accessibility tools built in. You just have to find them. Common accessibility issues in applications are basically everything we've already talked about. Again, if you learn to test for accessibility on the web, you're going to know how to test for accessibility in Word, in PDFs, and many other places. So let's look at a couple of different applications that you might use a lot. I'm going to start off with Microsoft Word. This is a document that I use oftentimes in the trainings that I give. So this is just a test Word document. I can go up here to the review menu and hit check accessibility, and it pops up over here and tells me all of the problems with my document. Some of my pictures are missing alt text. This table, it does not like for the reading order. My text is missing color contrast. This is our lovely UNC Chapel Hill blue. We call it Carolina blue, which does not work well with white. It has to be 19 pixels and bold or larger to be able to be used on a white background. So it's calling that out, and a couple of other things. So I just want to show you this that has all of these accessibility problems versus this document where if I run the accessibility checker here, the only issue that is left is this table, and I didn't have time to go in and fix the table. That's why that's still there. But the rest of the document looks exactly the same. I bolded this text so that it would pass color contrast. I made sure all of my images had alternative text. And essentially, I just went down this accessibility checker and followed the steps that it has to fix it. And it led me to the steps to remediate most of the document. Lastly, I just want to show Adobe Acrobat. Now, for all of you accessibility people out there, I'm sorry, I've just opened a PDF, and I know that this immediately triggers headaches in most accessibility professionals because I know it does me. PDFs can be made fully accessible. It does take quite a bit of time, but there is at least a jumping off point built into Adobe Acrobat. You can go over here and click accessibility check, start checking. Now, let me also slow down for just a moment here. We need to make sure that our accessibility toolbar is open over here. So we're on the accessibility toolbar. This little guy with his arms outstretched. We can check accessibility, start checking. And then here's all of our issues with our document. Just to give you an idea, I teach a 2-hour-long PDF accessibility training that only scratches the surface of how to make a PDF accessible. So it can be done, but it is quite the heavy lift. Can you not use a PDF and migrate to a website instead? Everybody will have a better experience if you do. Last but not least, this will take half a second. I just want to show Canvas. So UNC Chapel Hill uses Canvas. Sakai we used before, and I believe Blackboard and many others have some quick built-in accessibility checkers. So if I go into this announcement here and I click edit, I'm looking for this little symbol right here. It's sort of the universal symbol for digital accessibility. Notice it's even in our logo right here behind me, little guy with his arms outstretched. This will start running an automatic accessibility checker, which there are none in this document, to help you go through and find color contrast, missing alt text, some of those low-hanging fruit, quick fix type items. And I am well over time. So let me come over here and see if anybody has any other questions. And Emily says, do you have a testing tool for Microsoft Access forms? I don't believe Microsoft Access has a built-in checker. I am not a Microsoft Access aficionado. I apologize. I cannot speak to MS Access. If anybody else here does have that knowledge, I can try to do some research on it for you, but I'm sorry right off the bat, I do not have the knowledge to answer that question efficiently. Rebecca's mentioning that they have done a lot of accessibility updates in Access, but they don't currently have a built-in accessibility checker. And Microsoft is one of the better companies for accessibility, so I'm hoping that it will be coming relatively soon. But you never know. So sometimes it can be slow adopting for some of those big overhauls, especially in something like Access. But all right, that was a whirlwind of a presentation. I'm done talking.
It was wonderful, Chelsea. Thank you so much. I know you shared a lot, and I'm sure everyone, again, was scrambling down to write everything down. Remember, this is recorded. We will post the recording. Slides will be shared on the website if they're not already up. I think they might already be up, thanks to Rebecca. But we will be sharing our recordings out, and so you'll have that opportunity. And we really appreciate you pulling this together to talk about so many different aspects of accessibility at the end of a long day of learning. Thank you, Chelsea.
Okay.
And as we wrap up, I will thank you all for being here today. We are truly grateful to have had you join us. And we wanted to be sure to tell you that you've heard it multiple times today. Accessibility work is always a journey. So we can always learn new things, apply new things. We're always, even those of us that work in this field are always learning and applying new techniques and leveraging our colleagues to learn more. Having a group of people to encourage you and to ask questions to is such a wonderful and invaluable thing. We strongly encourage everyone to reach out to those on your campus that might be involved in this work, or ask somebody who you think might know somebody else on your campus. Like if you go to your disability services office and say who's working on accessibility, maybe you'll be able to find some connections and find a group of your own. If you're focused on accessibility and want to join in with our NC Higher Ed Digital Accessibility Collaborative, the group that hosted the event today, please let us know. We meet monthly, minus a month in the summer, and we just have great conversations, lots of sharing. And you can email sig-digital-accessibility@uncause.org to get added into our Google group email list. I will put that in the chat for you all, so you can join if you'd like. And we'll be able to add you in for those events and notices. Thank you again for being here. Rebecca, do you want to wrap us up for the day?
Sure. So I just want to say once again, if the conference team, planning team can turn on your cameras, and if we want to share the gallery view, I guess Eudora, you would need to stop sharing. I'd like to recognize our committee members that have been working pretty hard. Jonathan Milam was helping on tech support today. Melanie Ely, who's been a moderator today, Matt Sanhoff at App State, Darren Evans, I think you're on vacation, buddy, so thank you for stepping in, Chelsea Porter at Eudora, myself. I'd also like to thank UNC Calls, who sponsored our captioning and our interpreters today. Brian and Alita, you've done a great job, and I appreciate that. And Carolina's captioning down with her captioning today. So thank you for joining us. And we will see you all back here next year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
We will be putting recordings up. It'll be a couple of days, but everybody will get an email.